Okay, so within the broad spectrum of spirituality, not religion, not like Hinduism or Buddhism or Muslim. It's not a religion, it's just basically bringing all the different modalities together and centering it all around our energetic system, our chakras, and how our bodies connect with the earth and the sky. So look at our lives and what's happening here and why we are all existing and how it all is possible and everything. These different healing modalities or different ways to look at things, but in the same guise as everyone else in all of the other modalities, all wanting to do the same thing, to bring healing to our bodies, to our minds, and to our spirits. So you can have things that help you, these modalities, and some of them are human design. Your birth chart, which shows the exact spot that every single planet was in the solar system when you were born, where you were born, and how that predicts certain cycles in your life. And the human design shows you all of the same things, but in the way that it relates to our organs and stuff. So how our organs, so our emotional center is like down here. And our emotional center affects our spleen, and our spleen affects our heart, and the different things affect the different things, and that's why we have these gates that lead to the other things. It can show us where when we don't show up healthy in a certain area in our life, how that can cause certain diseases and disorders. If you have a defined emotional center or an undefined emotional center, will depend on whether or not you have empathic abilities or whether or not you're more within your own feelings at all times. You know what I mean? And if other people's opinions and thoughts and ideas of how life is and who we are and where we came from will affect your own ideas. You have to work so much harder to make sure that you can regulate your energetic self, because somebody like me who has undefined in a lot of my areas, for instance, my emotional center, if I am by myself, I am completely zen. I can't get any more zen, and it doesn't matter what I have or literally, I could probably be naked outside in the freezing fucking rain and still be at peace. I would still find a way to be extremely happy. And most people would probably look at me and be like, what is wrong with you? Like, nothing ever goes even nearly the way it should for you, and you're still fucking kicking. You're still fucking smiling, none the least. And even when I've been at my lowest and depressed in my life, I have literally still been that way when I'm by myself. When I'm by myself, I'm calm, I'm collected, I'm just perfect. Whenever I get around other people, whenever their moods fluctuate, it takes literally seconds for me to be on the same fucking level, if not higher than they are. And not only them, but if I'm in a room with others, I can feel everyone's feelings. And I just never really took the time to realize that most of the time that I got so anxious or fucking scared or angry, it's because of the people I was around. It was so much the people that I was around that it was not mine at all. And yet it would make me completely flip. I could be fucking zen and then fucking angry within a second and not even knowing why I'm fucking fuming. And so when you take the birth chart and you also realize where all these planets were and what that means within each thing, you can start placing these pieces together, you know? And then you have your actual energetic work where you're doing some yoga, or you're swimming, or you're just going outside and taking a walk. All of that kind of thing, all those.
Another big one is numerology. You can find a lot of good information there.
Those kinds of things, that helps just as much, because every time we're moving, we're shedding, we're peeling off those fucking layers that we've been building up in order to stay protected. I have a video clip of me at the beginning of this year when I started doing some trauma work to remember some of my repressed memories. Like, I would remember things, but then huge chunks of these things would be like taken out and I wouldn't have access to them. And so I started doing my own hypnosis on myself and pulling myself back into those moments as a child. I literally had to imagine myself there and pulling myself back into that memory and then being in that memory in order to remember it all. And then you change that whole thing by doing that yourself. So there are actually people who remember as a child some person coming to visit them and having conversations with them, maybe even going out and doing something, but then like everybody they ever told didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. And literally, when this person grows up and becomes the adult that they're gonna be, that adult is doing their inner child healing and ends up going back by hypnosis to that memory and talks to them, to their own self. And that self remembers that self. It's insane, but it's literally, that's what we do. We do this stuff and we don't even know it half the time. And the thing that I think we're all just like missing out on is, yes, we might dip our toes in and learn this thing, or dip our toes in and learn this thing while we're going throughout this journey, but rarely are we taking this thing and placing it here and placing it here and all of the things and then saying, okay, I've been doing this and I've been doing this and I've been doing this and this. Now how can I set these all up, make them appear in front of me so that I can see how I can place all these pieces together in order to come together in our whole fullness. And I think when we get to that point and we can bring all these modalities together, that's when we align to our circadian rhythm, our true alignment and ascension. And as a child, for me, I had to go through the process because this is kind of fucked up. It actually gave me an awakening in itself, is learning that every single person goes through the same exact stages at the same exact ages. And no matter what, they do this shit, right? But when we're in such fucking chaotic, crazy families, sometimes we start out and go through all of the fucking stages of a person, so quickly and within such a short amount of time that we've already gotten up to the fucking highest crown chakra. We've already been in our fucking spiritual gifts for the longest time, and we already had people fucking confusing us and making us feel like the things that we were seeing and feeling and experiencing weren't true. Therefore, that in itself sent us into another awakening, and then we got sent back into not feeling secure in ourselves, not having a fully grounded root chakra. Therefore, that not grounded root chakra fucks every bit of the system up, and so you're already racking on all of that extra fucking baggage so early on that when you finally come through once again in adulthood after everybody's fucked you over all your life, multiple times, you've gone through these stages all these different times. And so what somebody might go through in one lifetime, like as they grow up and get older and fucking eventually die, you've already experienced all that stuff 4 times over in the whole cycle. So by the time you get up there again and you finally are like, wow, I've not been fucking stupid this whole time. Like, this is what it's supposed to be about. This is what I've been fucking preaching. Why couldn't people fucking listen to me? Why did people make me feel like I was insane? And then in that feeling of everybody says I'm insane, I must be insane. So then you just feel like you are the only fucking person that might think this way or feel this way when it's actually all of us, but none of us really want to take the fucking time to dig in there and fucking ask questions. So I have a clip of me in one of my fractals, recording myself as a fractal. So I was addressing myself as Tara, so on and so forth. But this fractal had just realized what she had been doing this whole time, that she had been disassociating and creating these light fractals within herself. And even though it didn't appear as like how normal people would say, like splits of themselves, like I didn't show up as a different name or a different, like I didn't just wake up one day and my outfits were completely different, or I wanted to get my hair cut immediately and like I changed my whole fucking appearance to be like almost a different character. I always had the same character, but within my character, I had phases where I was different, and I wasn't different in the aspect of everything, but maybe I was less sexual and needed to hide myself more because I felt maybe low self-esteem or something, and it would be almost as if I was a different person during this time. And so this was this fractal trying to record herself and addressing the lower fractals of herself so that they knew, so that once all of these fractals became aware of themselves, that's when we could finally pull these things back together. And so while this fractal was recording herself saying this kind of stuff, she remembers on the spot something, because she's like, yeah, so like you would recognize when a person was feeling a certain type of way, and you would know exactly what you needed to do to calm that shit down so that things didn't get out of control. And so you would just go into this world within inside your head, these different worlds. Just like Joey had said that when he walked in on you that time as a kid, that you didn't remember, he was just now telling you about, that you He said he knew that you and Dad were doing something that he wasn't supposed to be seeing because the look on your face was otherworldly. And the only reason he had came into the room in the first place is because the old Sega or Nintendo game where you were shooting the ducks was on, and he could hear it playing, and he wanted to play it too. So when he walked in and he seen Dad molesting you, and you with this otherworldly look on your face, he knew that he shouldn't be there, and he immediately closed the door and walked away. And this wasn't even a time that you had remembered. You, me, had always remembered only one time. And that was after my dad's car accident, when he was half blind and he had already had to learn how to walk again and talk again and all these different things. And not only that, but my mom and I look almost identical. And my mom made me sleep in the middle, and he had to just like not see me, right? And it's all a big misunderstanding. And so you go your whole life and you act like he is the king and your mom is the shittiest person in the world. But now there's this whole other time that happened, and it would have been way before the car accident. So what was the excuse then? And so I started doing these regression sessions and started being able to bring back more and more and more of the missing pieces. And while I'm saying about this stuff, I say, yeah, so like every time Daddy was in that mood, you'd be like, oh shit, Daddy's in that mood again. And then right then and there in the video clip, you can like hear me almost like gasp, like oh my God, that's where we've been this whole time. We've been dissociating, and it started then when we were supplying our daddy with exactly what he needed when he got to a certain point, and we knew that that was the only thing that was going to transmute that energy. But my idea about this is to take the human design, and however your chart in human design falls, because you're going to be different things, and then the different gates relate to different things. Within each number, place a person in that spot, in that number, throughout those different age levels of your life. And then you can incorporate the human design chart in that way, thinking of each person being a number, and then somehow incorporate your birth chart with just like your, not only your sun sign, but your moon sign and all of the others, and bring them all in together. So what I was trying to say a few days ago in that one video, where I started out with, I've been going through a Kundalini awakening, but I couldn't stop crying. Is basically when people go through a spiritual awakening, they are enlightened to the way things really work in the world and in the spiritual body, and how the spiritual body affects everything else, right? So number one, that the media and stuff like that really isn't real, that they have to sometimes they create tragedies on purpose, just like I was explaining that parents do during their child's childhood for certain reasons, such as awakening them in order to get their spiritual gifts on the parent side instead of the kid's side, and to basically indoctrinate the kids into what they want them to view life as and whatnot. But on a bigger global scale, the government does this to us every day. They work us hard, but they reward us with a treat as a couple days off. And it's just all in order to get their agenda to happen. So, for instance, I'm not saying this for certain, but for instance, if the government needed to get into Iraq and all that area in order to say, dig for something, but they needed a reason to be there, right? They would have to create a reason to be there. Not to mention all of the fear and trauma that comes from the event that they create in order to get there will also generate enough energy for them to use on further agendas. Okay? So, and the spiritual body relating to the physical body is like literally any sickness, disease, anything that you ever experience within your physical body is related to a spiritual reason or a blockage in one of your energy systems, energy points within your energy body. So, for instance, I've been having a lot of skin issues, inflammation, stuff like that, which leads to other problems because every sickness can be equaled down to inflammation. Every sickness, disease, disorder is literally caused by inflammation. And it just depends on how bad that inflammation is, on how much of your body starts to shut down. And we know that you can go and literally type in like what energy points are related to skin issues, right? But the problem also, it'll give you certain chakra points and stuff like that you can work on, which is great, which I do all of these different energy healing modalities every single day. But the real issue that you have to get to is what is causing that blockage. And yeah, you can have a generalized idea, like, yeah, your trauma, duh, right? But you have to get to the exact core of that trauma, right? And that belief that you have held because of that trauma is what you need to break in order to get the sickness to break. And of course, doing all these other energy modalities help, but it only helps keep it contained, right? So a regular spiritual awakening is just when they start seeing things for a couple months or whatever, and then they just kind of like wake up to what's going on in the world, right? But a Kundalini awakening, I think, happens when a person has experienced the worst types of traumatic events and situations. And so much of those extremely traumatic situations that by the time they get to, their 30s, when the big awakening is supposed to happen, it can't happen in a regular process like a normal traumatized person might have gone through, right? Where a Kundalini awakening literally takes years to finish the entire process before you get all of your power. You get power generated throughout the whole thing, but you don't get all of it until the end, and it takes a while to get there, because what is happening is literally the Kundalini energy is going up your body like the Metatron's cube, sacred geometry. It does that whole thing, and it has to go up and back down. It has to go down, up. No, it has to go up, down, and then back up, or something like that, before it completes the cycle, right? And during that whole thing, what it's doing is literally clearing out all of the energy that's not supposed to be there. Taking away all the blockages from all of the trauma in this life, plus all of the other lives, right? And as the Kundalini energy is doing its process, you are changing. Your whole DNA structure is changing. It's going back to how it was originally supposed to be. Also, I think that the Kundalini energy happens with these people that have been so traumatized, but these people have been so traumatized because it was on purpose. They planned before they came here to come into a family. I don't know, I guess I'm understanding that I've always really known how to I don't know, I've always kind of known that I have this ability to affect change in ways that the typical person hasn't gotten a grasp on. I've always been so familiar with energy that I didn't even realize until the last few years that it wasn't normal to feel the energy, like that most people didn't. And I've always been able to find the positives in things and find the good in people, and never realized until the recent years that that's just not something the typical person does. That usually their first thoughts are very negative. Their mind spaces and stuff aren't more of a dreamland. And because I've always been able to kind of daydream my way out of the darkest of situations, I've never felt this like really negative perspective that the world has had. And perhaps that's because I've never really felt what it's like to be within that positive space in the 3D that I've cultivated these things within myself. Masturbating or oral sex was not Christian. Like, you did the deed, and it was godly, because God gave it to us to create children. So you did it to create children, and you didn't do it any funky way, you know? And so, also being told that everything that I came from was wrong, all the ways in which I lived previously was wrong, and how, because I've lived in that kind of situation for so long, now I technically have to fight harder and harder to be right, to do things in the correct way, to not let myself fall into that kind of situation, and how if I hadn't been adopted by these people, that I would have been a prostitute, that I would be nothing more than a drug-addicted sex slave, basically, and how me tapping into that sexuality in any type of way for anything other than my husband to make babies for was wrong. And then still having this idea that somehow I'm wrong, even though I don't feel wrong. It doesn't feel wrong to want to please my partner, you know? It doesn't feel wrong to satisfy them in the ways that satisfy them. But yet still having that being told to my brain over and over again